welcome to a Caitian Star Pride production. We have 3 Caitians in the fleet presently who would like to go and introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the fleet. We have Sirhan, MCU, sorry if I mispronounced it, and Ramik.
That would be you. So.
Yes, but you remember how Ramik talks. Anyway, since I'm not in character and yet I am, thank you for that one. First off, we'll start with the one who actually seems to be eloquent enough to go and correct other people. So, take it from the top.
Alright, well, my name is Sirhan, or Nazim if you watch my other channel. I'm currently first officer to Admiral Kinney of the fleet. I've been in the fleet for probably a year and a half, let's say, I don't really know, something like that. And my job mostly comprises of just monitoring the chat most of the time. I'm usually on, but I'm like AFK most of the time, but yeah.
Next, our MCU friend, eh? Quick, rapidamente, por favor.
Stop cracking me up. I'm MCU, and I'm the second officer to Admiral Kinney. I mostly do the same job that Sirhan does, only I tend to crack jokes that no one gets.
Well, it's not your fault. I tend to not get a lot of jokes, so.
And last, but thankfully least in girth, we have Ramik.
Hey!
Argue it if you want, but look at the graphics. I am considered to be the banker, Loremaster, and Sirhan, which is our fleet's head honcho's first officer. My position is quite simply keep the bank stocked and try and keep the peace, which I do the first reasonably well, the second, I plead the fifth.
Yeah, you tend to be a bit more Klingon in your attitude.
Go ahead, look it up. I dare you.
I wouldn't even know how to spell that to look it up.
Anyway,
not to mention, I sent my Klingon keyboard over to Best Buy, so...
Now that we've gotten the basic introductions down.
2 years ago.
The fleet is currently listing a roster of a whopping 254 members, of which all but about 4 are actual Caitians. Those 4 being comprised of Romulans and human alts, traditionally of Caitian characters, and 1 stray Romulan who we apparently adopted when their fleet was about to implode spectacularly.
Actually, didn't they happen to go back to their original fleet a couple months ago?
Not that I've noticed, but they might have.
I thought they did.
I can look when I get the gumptation up to do it. Anyway, Caitians, as you may or may not know, were introduced into the Star Trek franchise around the time of the animated series, with Lieutenant Morris, voiced by none other than Marjorie Roddenberry. I think I just mispronounced her name.
Yeah, completely. Majel Barrett or Majel Roddenberry.
I sit corrected.
Who also happened to voice about half the other women in the animated series, with Nichelle Nichols, who voiced the other half of the women characters on that show.
She also would happen to be known as the computer's voice in most of the existing series as well, and has made appearances in things including Babylon 5, which struck me as really weird, but hey, go with what works. However, Caitians were also shown to be in Star Treks 4 and 6 in incredibly small bit roles, and implied to be in Star Trek 5 for a rather bizarre shot, but we'll ignore that one because we don't really know the origin of the usually referred to as triple-breasted Catwoman.
Yeah, and that one little character was several $1 million to make, if I'm not mistaken, in a film with an ever-shrinking budget.
Really?
Thank you, Shatner.
Yep. And people wonder why Star Trek V is considered the worst.
I thought it was because of Shatner, but you know how you go for it. There is very little... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it was Shatner's fault. I mean, your job as a director is to make sure that the money goes where it's needed, not where it's wasted.
Anyway, now that we're on the Shatner's topic, let's go back to Trek. There is almost no established canon on the Caitian species. What little there is appears to be derived predominantly from the animated series. However, we have occasionally been able to find bits and pieces scattered throughout. For instance, the Caitians were the 12th species to sign the Accords for the Federation. In other words, the Caitians were the 12th members of the Federation of Planets, and were approved in a record time. Makes you wonder sometimes, huh? Since there is so little bit of established canon, most people make up their own what is referred to as headcanon. I'm especially bad at this, as both of these two wingnuts can attest to. considering I've put together a more than 100-page primer on the Caitian species.
You have put a lot of work into that thing. It's quite long. If you have to read all of it,
and impressive.
It's also quite incomplete, and in the middle of 1,001 rewrites again.
Well, something that long is expected to be rewritten over and over again to get it perfect. I mean, you can't do something that unbelievably long in just one shot.
Okay, you've just proven you are not an artiste. There is no such thing as perfection to an artiste. It is never perfect. It is never done. Anyway, because there's so little established canon, people make up their own little things all over the place. And we have plenty of that in the fleet. However, we also don't have as much roleplay, so it doesn't usually come up into play that much.
We do have some roleplay now and then, but it's usually more just goofing around more than like serious roleplay.
Yeah, our mix both are most experienced and serious roleplayer.
And a sad fact that be.
I've been sort of kind of trying to get into it, but I don't think I know my characters well enough to really do it well.
Let's give people a little hint based on that little admission. There is no such thing as the proper way to roleplay. If you ever want to learn to roleplay, the simplest way to do things is to play as yourself until you're comfortable with playing yourself in that universe. Then begin to change little things bit by bit. A speech pattern, a preference for spicy foods versus mild foods, whatever. Change it until it's what you feel most comfortable playing within the established universe that you're playing it in.
It's interesting.
By the way, that's also something your shrink will tell you to do. Boy, you. I was in 3rd grade, you little grasshopper, and I still was able to go and outsmart a licensed psychologist.
So anyway, I do have a tendency to write a lot of biographies for my characters and my bridge officers, but nothing in terms of role-playing really comes of it, though.
I've always made kind of backstories for characters when it strikes me as something that's unique. Like, for example, Sirhan, just for example, I don't usually like plan out my characters' backgrounds or anything. I usually allow that to come as I play them. But since I joined the fleet, Sirhan's backstory has grown quite a bit since what I originally intended of it.
Yeah, and so is MCU's, to be honest. I think originally he was a Farasan Caitian hybrid or some sort of Farasan spy.
I thought your original thing for Buzu was that he was a Caitian that was escaped from the Borg.
I think I tried that a few times with just about every character I've created, but it just didn't work out very well for obvious reasons.
Meanwhile, we have some crazy ones. After all, how many times has anybody been scratching their head at one of Mick's statements?
At least once.
You really want us to answer that?
This is what we call a rhetorical question.
Okay, good.
Mick asks these questions very often, does not Mick? Sirhan was expected to answer this question. This question was not rhetorical.
And that tends to happen a lot. Mick asks a question, and everyone answers anyway.
Or no one answers at all, because Mick has proven once again to be more powerful of wit than unarmed combatants. Yes, Mick is a bit of a crazy person. He does speak entirely in the third person with almost no use of pronouns.
I'm curious, where did you come up with that third person thing anyway?
It's something I've tested out in a few characters in the past, including one in a Serenity campaign. Serenity being the RPG they based off of the movie Serenity and the show Firefly.
I'm just going to nod my head and pretend I know what that is. But anyway, go ahead.
I am going to take away 300 geek credits from you for that.
That's fine. I never had any to begin with.
And I'm taking away 500.
You are now required to look up information on the TV show Firefly. It only lasted for one season. It was not renewed. It then would generate later on a movie called Serenity.
I watched part of the Firefly movie.
Okay, we'll give him some of those credits back then. Basically, it's something to go and set him apart. It's something to show he's different. In the case of Mick, I actually gave it a reason. He was severely injured, mainly to the head and psychological trauma, during one of the battles of the Dominion War. The assault on the shipyards of Talos 3, I believe it was.
Oh, is that the one in the show?
They mention it in the show, but do not actually show it. It's done at the same time as an assault that the Defiant is performing. That's why the Defiant has to perform that particular act without any backup. I would have to go and recheck the episodes to figure out which actual mission they were on at the time. but he was severely injured during that, suffering physical and psychological trauma that has resulted in a bit of a personality screw-up. He's also a bit of a merry prankster. How many times has he threatened to put Nair into somebody's sonic shower?
That better question would be, how many times has he?
The world may never know. Also, for beeps and giggles, for Micke is thought to be the oldest Caitian in the fleet. He is 280, I believe it's now 4 years old. He is, in fact, older than the Federation itself. That would give you another reason for him to be a wee bit off his rocker. This also means that he has witnessed every major conflict, either as a participant or as somebody finding out about it and reading it in their own era, since the beginning of the Federation, which would include the invasion of Sector 001 by the Borg. He witnessed the Dominion War. He would witness the Klingon Federation wars, since there were multiple, as well as several clashes that were had with the Tholians, with the Romulans, the Cardassian War. In other words, he's seen a lot, and it's left a bit of a mark on his brain, what's left of it.
And there isn't much, as
Boy,
I'm sure Sirhan could attest to.
I don't know, run your scan.
I've been doing that this entire time before we started this episode, so there isn't much up there. There's just mainly cotton now.
Ah, this is the result, by the way, of prolonged use of Pharesia Nepta.
Anyway, since we're on the topics of like roleplay and things like that, what about you, Mizzou? What was your character's bio?
Well, like I said, originally he was either, I think at first a Caitian Pharosan hybrid, then a Pharosan spy, but just this past few months, I've been making it. He sort of follows the young Commander Adama from the reimagined Galactica. He grew up on a Caitian colony world, which eventually joined the Caitian militia, which was mentioned in Mick's culture document. He became a fighter pilot and participated in a battle against my newest character, Sisatu. I'm wishing I had a rename token, though, because I just thought of a name that would be a little bit more Egyptian-y for that Pharosan character called Siset. So anyway, he kind of has, instead of being a Pharosan, he now just hates them.
That's a pretty cool story you got together.
And probably better to read it than for me to actually tell it. I tend to suck at telling the story. But I have 7 character slots. I'm leaving 1 open for a new Pharosan science officer. And yeah, I currently have 6 characters, all of them cats.
And he wonders why we have such tribble problems when he's around.
Yes, I do tend to dump my tribble problems on unsuspecting Caitians in the fleet.
And by unsuspecting, you mean pretty much everyone.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Yeah,
those
it doesn't
tribbles
matter.
do
It's
seem
just
to
a
like
rock
you,
handle that.
Sirhan.
Alright, let's go to another topic right quick. What is the specialty of each of your character, each of the characters we've got here, and what ship do they tend to use most? We'll start with Sirhan so we can get him speaking again.
Alright, well, I built Sirhan out pretty much to be a medic, which is actually kind of interesting because when I first made my character, he was tactical. When he was level 12, I think, I actually deleted him and remade him into science. I started playing around with the medical abilities and the kits and stuff to just see how they worked, and it tended to be rather beneficial because he turned out to be more of a tank. He tends to be the support character throughout the times I play with him.
Mzu? Or MCU?
Well, Mzu is my the second Caitian character that I created. He's a tactical officer, and mostly now he flies around either in the Ambassador retrofit, which came out with the 3rd anniversary Temporal Ambassador mission, or he uses the Heavy Escort retrofit.
Which was my mistake. Sirhan, what do you drive again?
Oh, I drive a long-range science vessel retrofit. Since I'm a lifetime subscriber, I was able to get the ship for free on the character, so I got the albedo generator with it as well, which is cool. I fly it using the Andorian phasers.
Now, meanwhile, depending upon who you ask, Micke either is a civilian or an engineer. His build is predominantly geared toward fabrication. He'll create turrets and things like that. However, he often pretends to be a civilian wearing mining clothing, and will usually be found on the Purloin, a 2-fleet-class freighter. However, when it comes time for that clarion call of battle, what will he bring into the fray? Come on, Sirhan, you know the answer.
Another freighter.
Or at least something looking like a freighter. A Vath Bastion flight deck cruiser, usually flying under a hollow cloak, so it looks like a harmless freighter.
He will kick your tail across the quadrant.
Or at least hold you off until he can get reinforcements. Okay, let's see. Should we be bad-mouthing the superior officers?
No, that
Considering
would
that
not
they're going to be watching this, I don't want to be reprimanded.
Neither do I.
You lack discipline, so I will provide disciplinary action! We've covered a lot of stuff already in a sense. Alright, what aspect of the game do you think most breaks Trek reality? And I don't mean the physical layouts, because that's a result of having to have such huge spaces that don't make physical sense in the real world.
I was going to say the lack of time, because with this last mission surface tension, we're finally getting into 2410, even though the real life year is some 4 years after the game started.
Sirhan?
I'm actually going to disagree with Mizzou there, because with Sirhan's backstory, I kind of depended on that, the timeline thing, quite a bit. So I'd say the most game-breaking thing was when they added the Dyson battle zone, the ground battle zone. I mean, I know why they added it, and I think it's pretty cool. It's a really awesome place, but seriously, dinosaurs? That just doesn't... That does not bode well for Star Trek.
Well,
I'm actually going to have to go
There
with
is-
MCU on this one. I tend to think that the time compression in the game, which is a forced mechanic, it has to be there, is one of the biggest reality breakers. Because yes, it's been 4 years to 1 year. But also, how long in Star Trek do they keep going about, well, we're X number of hours away from this place? To zoom across the galaxy like we do, even with the transwarp, which I'm kind of iffy on, would take huge amounts of time. And realistically, none of us could attain the kind of warp speeds that we're doing. Most times, if you're watching a show or a movie, what warp do they move at? 6, 7, maybe 8?
This is supposed to be 40 years after the Voyager series ended.
True, but my biggest problem is that warp 10 is infinite speed. You are all places at all times. And warp speeds are logarithmic. So the higher you go, the closer to 10 you get, the exponentially faster you're going. Warp 1 is light speed only. That's it. So I'll give them the time compression is probably one of the worst screw-ups, but it has to be there. Just like the fact that I'm looking at a ceiling that's maybe 50 feet above me when it should only be maybe 10.
Well, there's that, and the fact that, like with the ending of Trek 2009, where it's from third-year cadet to captain of the Federation flagship. I don't buy that with that movie, and so suddenly, within a year, we go from graduating from Starfleet Academy, and just because we happen to survive a Borg invasion, we get to outrank the captain of the Enterprise in a year.
There's actually something I'll go with on that one, because if you look at it, you're still only in charge of one ship. Technically, the Vice Admiral rank is stupid. It technically should still just be captain. You are captain for the entire time you level up, because you are in charge of one ship. That's why, if you look, I will never put higher than captain, or occasionally rear admiral lower half, which I call commodore to most folks, on Remick, because that's the highest rank he should ever really attain.
That's true.
If you even look at the culture document, I don't ever put anybody above admiral. There is no vice, rear, and all that crap. Kenny, Sirhan, all of them, Sirhan, are admirals. We people who are captains in the fleet are commodores, and we command captains. So the rank one is another forced issue. There just is not enough rank spread that they could use to make it appropriate. Because in Star Trek you have cadet, ensign, lieutenant, lieutenant junior grade, lieutenant, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, commodore, and then up from there it gets a little wonky. And only a captain is ever supposed to be in command of a ship.
Although, that does bring up one weakness in Star Trek in general, is the Enterprise is the flagship of the Federation, but its commanding officer is not an admiral. I find that interesting.
Admiral is a flag rank. Admiral is usually done, you will be in command of a fleet, group, or otherwise a collection of ships. You may choose to put your flag onto a ship. At that point, it becomes a flagship in all real senses. The term flagship in this case actually means the epitome, the supreme model, or the exemplary one, the one that we're putting forth as our best. So we put all our best and brightest. So they're using the word properly, but it's not being used in the right way because you have an existing context for the term flagship and flag officer. Holy shit. I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to be rambling so much.
Don't worry, that's why we have Sirhan here.
What, as an acoustic baffle?
Sort of.
Okay, since we did most Trek breaking, what is the most real to Trek thing to you in the game?
I would probably say the new Odyssey uniform. I think that's, for one thing, Starfleet finally has a professional-looking uniform, and instead of the crews of the ships just wearing whatever random thing they decide to put on, it gives uniform look to the personnel and the background characters.
I'll have to argue that one because they were using a consistent NPC uniform for a while, and Trek has always had a uniform for the different people. It just, as captains, we get to go and play around with it so much that's ridiculous. But that's part of the game experience. I mean, look at me right now. I mean, Sirhan over there is wearing a frickin' scarf from the winter event, and I'm wearing civilian clothing.
But I like my scarf.
Snarf, but Sirhan. By the way, one of the biggest game breakers besides the time dilation, I'm going to have to say, is the amount of warfare and reduction in diplomacy and exploration and stuff.
That's a very fair point.
It's again a game mechanic, though.
Yeah, but it's still, like the Klingon Federation War, I've always had some problems with. But that's more because, and no offense, Ron, but one of the problems I have with Voyager was so often they knew what they wanted to happen, but they didn't care too much how they got there.
One of my other big problems with Voyager is how the f*** did they manage to survive? They had no shipyards, no way to replicate the right sort of components a lot of times, no way to get the materials they needed. I mean, come on, look how they dealt with the Rhode Island, or whatever that was, that Rhode Island-class ship they ran into.
The Equinox.
Thank you.
Considering logistics was a very major weakness on that show.
Well, not just logistics, too. You're going through Borg space. All of the Borg know everything at the same time, more or less. How did you not get completely destroyed by the Borg?
Because they're the pedal ship.
One Borg cube can obliterate a fleet, almost.
Well, and Dark Frontier handled it pretty well, because they looked for a crippled ship that, it had been damaged, and so was an easy target for piracy, even though a few episodes earlier they had problems with buying weapons off the black market. But Unimatrix Zero, they go up against a souped-up version of the ship which nearly wiped out the entire Federation.
And they survived this how? That's one of my problems.
Oh, and I think that goes back to one of the biggest mistakes with the Borg, at least where I'm concerned, is the Borg Queen. If you can't win a battle that one-sided, you're just proving how useless you are.
Well, they did actually, with the introduction of the Undine in the Voyager, give us a reason why the Borg are occasionally able to be defeated so soundly. The Borg don't learn through anything but experience and assimilation. So if I walk up to Sirhan and I punch him in the face, he is going to assimilate that information that I'm a bad person and he should not like me. However, if another Caitian walks up, he doesn't have an idea if that Caitian is going to punch him in the face or not. While if you were a human, you could observe the interaction and other ones, and you'd experiment. And you'd find out, oh, all these guys are beep. And then you'd be able to say, okay, I'm not going to go near these people. The Borg will just keep doing it until they actually click. Oh, third. They don't experiment. They don't learn through observation because they really don't do that.
Except that there's a line in Best of Both Worlds which proves exactly why that isn't exactly correct. When they alter their shields, it briefly has the Borg confused, and Riker points out they have the ability to analyze and adapt. So they can still figure it out. It's just, with the Undine, it's kind of like in Mass Effect. The Reapers are so strong that they can overwhelm just about everything you have.
I'll give you that one. They can analyze. They're not creating experiments, though. They're only analyzing things which they encounter. However, we're going to get into time issues pretty quick here. Any closing thoughts, guys? Besides the fact that I shouldn't be the moderator next time?
No, actually, you're a pretty good moderator.
Yeah, you are, actually.
Oh, crap. A new line to put on my heading.
Congratulations, you've been promoted.
Loremaster, Quartermaster, Sirhan's second officer.
You keep
What was the
mixing
other master I was for a while? Oh,
You
yeah,
really
Key
need to start
Master.
mixing me up with Sirhan, okay? There's like a 200-pound difference here.
In which direction? And would that be Imperial pounds, Troy pounds, or would that be the unit of currency used in England in pre-unification era?
You want me to show you?
No, thank you. I don't think my eyes can take it. Anyway, same Caitian time, same Caitian channel, or rather, whenever the hell we get this thing back up and running. So from all of us here, maybe go and give you a parting word from Skyrim, which I think will work well here. May you walk on warm sands. Yeah, it's hard to do that voice and get some volume. Give me a break.